Good morning. This is Matthew Brenner. Today is December 27th, 2016. And I thought I would do a pretty serious podcast today. Yesterday I talked about ISIS putting out the call via Telegram. Well, Secrets of Jihadis was the name of the social group, to have lone wolf attacks on churches. And it was interesting because places where I had posted it, people thought I was some kind of religious zealot. And I was just going into the symbolism, the fact that, Obama and Hillary Clinton were Saul Alinsky fans. So, Saul Alinsky dedicated Rules for Radicals to Lucifer. And the main thing was Saul Alinsky was a fan of, chaos and disorder and sowing the seeds of chaos. And that's the whole point of us being the puppets behind ISIS and providing funding and, supporting training camps and arming them with weapons, is that so we can do regime changes and we can put fear into people. And to have them attack Christians is great symbolism because Christians were part of Donald Trump's base. And since the liberals are being put out of business, the House and the Senate are being taken over by Republicans. And then Donald Trump is taking over. So it's just great symbolism. That's all I was getting at. But it's interesting how leftists really are off-put by the idea. It's almost like, oh, those Christians have it coming. It's like, really? You don't have friends and family that are Christians, even fair-weather Christians, that might go to church during the Christmas season because they feel guilty for not going the rest of the year? I don't know about some of you guys, but I come from a Catholic family. And I'll admit, I'm lapsed. I don't go to church anymore. Doesn't mean I'm an atheist. So, yeah, I probably won't get hurt at a church attack, but I still think it sucks. I think it sucks what happened in the German Christmas tree market. That's terrible. The carnage. And then, somebody brought up a point. At the Christmas tree market, they find the guy's ID. Why is it from everything from JFK to 9/11 to the Christmas tree market, they always find these guys' ID? Is that like the hallmark or the calling card or the trade craft of a false flag? I don't know. I don't know anymore. But you know what? For a moment of levity, if we're going to talk, I was going to talk about nuclear weapons today because I had ended with the clip of Putin talking about ISIS. And I played the little bit from SNL, about how Trump and Putin are just best buds. Well, and now Russia is the propaganda machine. Well, I thought, let's go through the time machine back to the third debate. And, let's set the backdrop here with Trump and Hillary Clinton going at it and see what they have to say about nuclear weapons and policy, because this is important. Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and Donald Trump is the president-elect. So let's flash back in time to the third presidential debate. I want to say October 19th of this year, and see what they say.
Secretary Clinton, I want to clear up your position on this issue because in a speech you gave to a Brazilian bank for which you were paid $225,000, we've learned from the WikiLeaks that you said this, and I want to quote, "My dream is a hemispheric common market with open trade and open borders." So that's the question. That's the question. Please quiet, everybody. Is that your dream, open borders?
Well, if you went on to read the rest of the sentence, I was talking about energy. We trade more energy with our neighbors than we trade with the rest of the world combined. And I do want us to have an electric grid, an energy system that crosses borders. I think that will be a great benefit to us. But you are very clearly quoting from WikiLeaks. And what's really important about WikiLeaks is that the Russian government has engaged in espionage against Americans. They have hacked American websites, American accounts of private people, of institutions. Then they have given that information to WikiLeaks for the purpose of putting it on the internet. This has come from the highest levels of the Russian government, clearly from Putin himself in an effort, as 17 of our intelligence agencies have confirmed, to influence our election. So I actually think the most important question of this evening, Chris, is finally, will Donald Trump admit and condemn that the Russians are doing this and make it clear that he will not have the help of Putin in this election, that he rejects Russian espionage against Americans, which he actually encouraged in the past. Those are the questions we need answered. We've never had anything like this happen in any of our elections before.
That was a great pivot off the fact that she wants open borders, okay? How did we get onto Putin?
Hold on.
No.
Wait. Hold on, folks, because this is going to end up getting out of control. Let's try to keep it quiet for the candidates and for the American people.
So just to finish on the borders.
Yes.
She wants open borders. People are going to pour into our country. People are going to come in from Syria. She wants 550% more people than Barack Obama. And he has thousands and thousands of people. They have no idea where they come from. And you see, we are going to stop radical Islamic terrorism in this country. She won't even mention the words, and neither will President Obama. So I just want to tell you, she wants open borders. Now we can talk about Putin. I don't know Putin. He said nice things about me. If we got along well, that would be good. If Russia and the United States got along well and went after ISIS, that would be good. He has no respect for her. He has no respect for our president. And I'll tell you what, we're in very serious trouble because we have a country with tremendous numbers of nuclear warheads, 1,800, by the way, where they expanded and we didn't. 1,800 nuclear warheads. And she's playing chicken. Look, Putin, from everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit that the
puppet.
Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America, that you encouraged espionage against our people, that you are willing to spout the Putin line, sign up for his wish list, break up NATO, do whatever he wants to do, and that you continue to get help from him because he has a very clear favorite in this race. So I think that this is such an unprecedented situation. We've never had a foreign government trying to interfere in our election. We have 17 intelligence agencies, civilian and military, who have all concluded that these espionage attacks, these cyber attacks, come from the highest levels of the Kremlin, and they are designed to influence our election. I find that deeply disturbing, and I think it's time.
She has no idea whether it's Russia, China, or anybody else.
I am not quoting myself.
No idea.
I am quoting
Hillary, you have no idea.
17 intelligence. Do you doubt 17
our
military
has
and
no
civilian
idea.
agencies? Well,
yeah,
he'd rather believe Vladimir Putin than the military and civilian intelligence professionals who are sworn to protect us. I find that just absolutely.
She doesn't like Putin because Putin has outsmarted her at every step of the way. Excuse me. Putin has outsmarted her in Syria. He's outsmarted her every step of the way.
I do get to ask some questions.
Yes, that's
And I would
fine.
like to ask you this direct question. The top national security officials of this country do believe that Russia has been behind these hacks. Even if you don't know for sure whether they are, do you condemn any interference by Russia in the American election?
By Russia or anybody else.
You condemn their interference?
Of course I condemn. Of course I can. I don't know Putin. I have no idea. I never met Putin. This is not my best friend. But if the United States got along with Russia, wouldn't be so bad. Let me tell you, Putin has outsmarted her and Obama at every single step of the way. Whether it's Syria, you name it, missiles. Take a look at the startup that they signed. The Russians have said, according to many, many reports, I can't believe they allowed us to do this. They create warheads and we can't. The Russians can't believe it. She has been outsmarted by Putin, and all you have to do is look at the Middle East. They've taken over. We've spent $6 trillion. They've taken over the Middle East. She has been outsmarted and outplayed worse than anybody I've ever seen in any government whatsoever.
We're a long way away from immigration, but I'm going to let you finish this topic.
Well,
About 45 seconds.
Yeah,
And she always will be.
I find it ironic that he's raising nuclear weapons. This is a person who has been very cavalier, even casual, about the use of nuclear weapons. He's advocated more countries getting them, Japan, Korea, even Saudi Arabia. He's said, well, if we have them, why don't we use them, which I think is terrifying. But here's the deal. The bottom line on nuclear weapons is that when the president gives the order, it must be followed. There's about 4 minutes between the order being given and the people responsible for launching nuclear weapons to do so. And that's why 10 people who have had that awesome responsibility have come out and in an unprecedented way said they would not trust Donald Trump with the nuclear codes or to have his finger on the nuclear button.
I have 200 generals and admirals, 21 endorsing me, 21 Congressional Medal of Honor recipients. As far as Japan and other countries, we are being ripped off by everybody in the world. We're defending other countries. We are spending a fortune doing it. They have the bargain of the century. All I said is we have to renegotiate these agreements because our country cannot afford to defend Saudi Arabia, Japan, Germany, South Korea, and many other places. We cannot continue to afford. She took that as saying nuclear weapons. Look, she's been proven to be a liar on so many different ways. This is just another lie.
Well, I'm just quoting you when
there's
you were
no
asked
quote.
about
You're not going to find a quote from me.
Nuclear competition in Asia. You said, you know, go ahead, enjoy yourselves, folks. That kind
and defend
of language,
yourselves. And defend yourselves. I didn't say nuclear. And defend yourself.
The United States has kept the peace through our alliances. Donald wants to tear up our alliances. I think it makes the world safer, and frankly, it makes the United States safer. I would work with our allies in Asia, in Europe, in the Middle East, and elsewhere.
You know, I have a confession about Trump. At first, I used to be off-put by his manner and how he was rude. But then part of me, it started to grow on me, and especially when he was dealing with the likes of her, there's just something about her. There's a certain person in my life that she reminds me of that I just can't stand, and I'm not going to say who it is, but I think the more she started to remind me of her, and the way that I saw Trump deal with her, the more I think he actually grew on me. And it's not that I think he's the perfect solution for America, but he's so much better than Hillary Clinton because I just can't stand her. That's why I think I ended up supporting him. And at first, when he came around, I fell for the mainstream media's tricks. Like, I thought it was pretty awful with the bit about the disabled reporter. But then if you go back and you watch the speech, he does the same voice or whatever to make fun of, like, Ted Cruz. So it's really just him being an asshole to everybody. So that I can deal with. If he's going to be an asshole to everybody the same way, then that's just who he is. But anyway, let's move along. We're talking about nuclear weapons. So how does this work in general? What has been the policy going back to the Cold War? What types of weapons do we already have? You know, what is the strategy? We'll talk about how powerful they are coming up after that. But first, I decided to put in a video that talks about how this began and what kind of strategy was developed during the Cold War, because I thought that's important. And then we can move beyond that once we set the stage for the 3 different types of strategy, or the triad, if you like.
Hi, my name's Alan Sens, and I'm sitting outside the First Nations House of Learning here at the University of British Columbia. Welcome to the Global Politics Instructional Video Series. In this series, we're looking at a number of key concepts relevant to the study of international relations and global politics. And today, we're looking at nuclear deterrence. Now, the whole idea of deterrence predates nuclear weapons. It's a very old concept. And the basic idea of deterrence is you're trying to prevent someone from attacking you. you're trying to prevent an attack or deter an attack on yourself, whether you as an individual, or you as a group of people, or you as a state country. Now, originally, most deterrence was achieved by denial. That is to say, an attempt to deny your possible attacker their objectives. And typically this was achieved through things like building up a big army, or building lots of castles and fortifications or walls, this sort of thing. And the whole idea then was to deny your opponent the prospect of an easy victory at a reasonable cost. If by building up a big army and building lots of castles and fortifications, you had made it very difficult for anyone to believe that they could attack you with any chance of success, well, then they wouldn't attack you, right? So the whole idea was they were deterred from attacking you. They wouldn't attack you in the first place. Now, this idea of deterrence by denial didn't always work, of course. But the idea was prevent someone from attacking you by making it very expensive to do so, and by denying them the possibility of a good chance of victory. Now, when nuclear weapons came along, the destructive power of nuclear weapons changed the idea of deterrence quite a bit. Instead of denial, it now became possible to think of deterring someone by the threat of punishment. Specifically, by the threat of inflicting unacceptable damage on them if they did attack you. So essentially, what we were saying during the Cold War was that if you attack me, I will attack you in a way that inflicts so much damage on your country, you couldn't possibly hope to survive. And the logic there was, you would never then be attacked in the first place. An attacker would be deterred because of the threat of punishment. And nuclear weapons, being so powerful, really made that threat quite credible. So during the Cold War, for example, nuclear deterrence was one of the key components in this standoff between the United States and the West and the Soviet Union and the so-called East. Let's take a closer look at nuclear deterrence. Okay, nuclear deterrence. Now, the whole idea of nuclear deterrence is it's based on the threat of punishment. You prevent someone from attacking you, and you achieve this by presenting any possible attacker with the prospect of incurring unacceptable damage if they attack you. And so they won't attack you in the first place. They're deterred. And during the Cold War, this was achieved by the United States and the Soviet Union through the use of increasingly large stockpiles of nuclear weapons. And to illustrate that, I'm just going to draw the United States and the Soviet Union here, or if you like, country A and country B if you want to be abstract. So here's the United States, and here is the Soviet Union. And in the early part of the Cold War, both sides had nuclear weapons, but had only bombers to deliver those nuclear weapons. So I'm just going to draw some bombers here. And those are very ugly bombers, but let's just make believe that they're bombers. And the whole idea is that if one side attacked the other with nuclear weapons, the other side would respond with its nuclear weapons. But it wasn't until really the late 1960s, early 1970s that both sides started to develop weapon systems called intercontinental ballistic missiles, or if you like, ICBMs. And these ICBMs were based underground, so I'll just draw some silos here. And in each silo was an intercontinental ballistic missile with a nuclear warhead on top, or in some cases, several nuclear warheads on top. And when ICBMs were developed, it actually enhanced the idea of nuclear deterrence and the threat of punishment, because not only were the bombers available, and they, of course, could be shot down, there were now all of these ICBMs. As the Cold War went on, another technology was developed, and they were called SLBMs, submarine-launched ballistic missiles. And these were ICBMs based on submarines. And both the United States and the Soviet Union had these. And these were ICBMs then that could be launched from submarines. So by the mid part of the Cold War, really, both the United States and the Soviet Union had a triad of delivery systems: ICBMs, SLBMs, and bombers. And the whole idea of nuclear deterrence was that if one side decided it was going to attack the other for whatever reason, that attack would be met with a retaliatory response from ICBMs, SLBMs, and bombers. And then the other side presumably would have responded in kind. And you would have this enormous nuclear exchange, nuclear weapons being launched from various delivery systems against the other side. And by the mid part of the Cold War, both sides had so many delivery systems and so many nuclear weapons, they were faced with the prospect that if either side attacked the other and received a retaliatory response, both the United States and the Soviet Union would be destroyed. And this became known as mutual assured destruction, or MAD for short. It was indeed a mad world. If either side attacked the other would be able to respond by inflicting unacceptable damage with nuclear weapons on the other side. And the fact that both the United States and the Soviet Union could do this during the Cold War meant that they were in a mutual hostage situation, a balance of terror, a balance of fear. And so, the argument runs, deterrence. They would not attack each other in the first place. Because going to war meant suicide. It meant suicide, certainly, for the United States and the Soviet Union. It possibly meant suicide for everyone living in the northern hemisphere of the planet, and quite possibly, it meant suicide for human civilization.
Mutually assured destruction, indeed. So there you have it, the triad: the bombers, the intercontinental ballistic missiles, and the submarine-launched ballistic missiles. And, supposedly they had treaties where they were going to dispose of these weapons, and supposedly the Soviet Union and later Russia did, and the United States did, but who knows who really did what. And, the other thing that nobody in this video, or the speaker in this video didn't mention was suitcase nukes. I remember hearing about those. Now, let's get to how powerful these suckers are. And first, you're going to hear about the bombs they dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in terms of how powerful those are. And then everything is going to be relative to that. So, now you know about the delivery systems. Let's talk about how powerful these suckers are. And then I want you to think about, do we want to start a hot war with a country that probably still has plenty of these weapons and force them into a situation where they have to use these weapons? Possibly on us. I think not.
On July 16, 1945, the first ever nuclear weapon was detonated in a New Mexico desert. At the time, the Trinity test was one of the largest man-made explosions ever. Nuclear blasts are measured in TNT, and this one yielded about 20,000 tons of TNT. That size blast would cover an estimated area of about 5 square miles in radioactivity. But in the 70 years since, nearly 2,000 nuclear tests have been performed, and about 125,000 nuclear bombs have been built. So we wanted to know, how powerful are modern nuclear weapons? Well, most people think of the nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II as extraordinarily powerful explosions. Combined, they yielded about 36,000 tons of TNT. But 16 years later, the Tsar Bomba was built, designed to be 3,000 times more powerful. It was originally supposed to deliver a yield of 100 million tons, which would destroy an area the size of Connecticut. The weapon was built by the Soviet Union as a display of power against the United States, and was tested with a yield of 50 million tons of TNT. That test is, to this day, the most powerful man-made explosion in history. But that was more than 50 years ago. So did the US one-up the Soviet Union and build their own 200 megaton bomb? In fact, they did the opposite. During the Cold War, the actual point of building more nuclear weapons was mutually assured destruction. If the Soviets nuked the US, they might as well be nuking themselves. For this system to work, the US determined that they'd need the equivalent of 400 million tons of TNT in their nuclear arsenal. Instead of building one giant bomb, they diversified into thousands of relatively lower yield weapons. Additionally, new rockets called MIRVs were developed to carry multiple nuclear warheads, thereby upping the maximum yield. By the end of the Cold War, the US was estimated to hold about 3.8 billion tons worth of nuclear weapon yield. But in the years following, the US and Russia signed a series of nuclear disarmament treaties, promising to limit their stockpile to about 2,000 deployed weapons each. Today, 9 countries are believed to have nuclear weapons. The US and Russia hold about 15,000 nukes, with the other 7 countries holding between 8 and 300 nukes each. The most powerful thermonuclear weapon currently in the US's arsenal yields 1.2 million tons, equal to about 200 square miles of devastation. Meanwhile, China is believed to have a 5 million ton yield weapon within their active arsenal. And although Russia was once the world leader in giant nuclear bombs, in recent years, they've retired their largest 20 million ton bombs. Similarly, the US dismantled their 9 million ton B-53 bomb in 2011. From the start of the nuclear arms race to today, weapon yields have varied dramatically. In the late 1950s, a tactical nuclear gun was even developed, which fired the smallest nuclear bomb ever, called the Davy Crockett. It was 2.5 million times smaller than the yield of the Tsar Bomba. Clearly, nowadays it doesn't really matter how big your nuclear weapons are. Every single one is capable of unmitigated devastation. So which countries actually have nuclear weapons? Find out in the video above, and if you want to get an inside look at a region made uninhabitable by radiation, watch my report from Fukushima in the box below.
Okay, so I think now we have set the stage for what these suckers can do. I mean, it's a pretty awful state of affairs. I really think that it's not just a matter of what you're going to blow up. It's the fact that it's going to be radioactive and uninhabitable for hundreds of years to come. And just look at the devastation with Fukushima. Look at the fact that you're now seeing radioactive spikes on the shores of California, because people have measured the radiation, and it's not something you're hearing about from the mainstream media. Of course not. I've heard about it from late night talk radio, the alternative media. But of course, CNN's not going to talk about it. No, they're busy talking about how Russia did it. Because, God forbid we talk about stuff that really matters. But let's see here. There was another clip that I was going to play, because apparently Donald Trump tweeted something about nuclear weapons, I want to say yesterday. So let's see what journalist H.A. Goodman has to say about Donald Trump's tweet. Now, keep in mind, this guy is a liberal, but you know what? He's been extremely critical of Hillary Clinton, and he has been critical of Obama too. So I consider him a very objective liberal journalist. And if all liberals were this objective, I don't think I would have a problem with them if journalists actually were like this guy. So let's hear what he has to say about nuclear weapons and Trump and a few other matters. I'll include his commentary now.
I'm going to read you this before I get into Trump upending the world order that the establishment loves so much. I'm going to read you this. Obama already set to spend $20 billion a year to update U.S. nukes. The Washington Times. Trump tweets that nation must, quote, expand its nuclear capability. President-elect Donald Trump has stirred up fears of a new arms race in a Twitter message on improving, quote, nuclear capability. But President Obama already has committed to spending as much as $20 billion a year to update the nation's ability to conduct nuclear war. During his 2 terms, Mr. Obama has blessed the go-ahead for their new major weapon systems, a strategic bomber, a ground-based intercontinental ballistic missile, and an air-launched atomic cruise missile. He also funded a new, more accurate atomic bomb. This is the man who won the Nobel Peace Prize. Okay. At a congressional hearing this summer, a top Pentagon policymaker and 2 4-star generals laid out long-term modernization plans up to $450 billion over 20 years to stay ahead of China and Russia. This happened under President Obama. Is anyone talking about the world order being upended, or the world order, or America and Russia having a renewed Cold War because President Obama gave his blessings on a whole new upgrade of U.S. nuclear capabilities and a new strategic bomber and a whole bunch of new weapon systems? The issue here is that I disagree with Trump. I don't think we need to focus on increasing our nuclear capabilities. We already have enough nukes to destroy the planet many times over. So do the Russians. That's been the case since the Cold War. But the issue, and I did a segment on that, but the point is the media is not only was it so wrong in trying to prop up Hillary Clinton, who, by the way, put a Chicago commodities trader on a nuclear advisory board. That's a fact. That's not fake news. That was on CNN, all the other publications or sites, Washington Post, that aren't supposed to be fake news. They're supposed to be real news. And the real news was that a Chicago commodities trader was put on a nuclear advisory board. A nuclear advisory board. And given top secret clearance. And became a Democratic superdelegate. Simply because he was a big-time Clinton Foundation donor. The real news regarding that is that, well, it was just, they actually, I think the campaign basically said, the Clinton campaign said, well, we like to have a whole array of different viewpoints. So they put the Chicago commodities trader on the nuclear advisory board. Anyway, that was, the world order was fine with that. Trump's latest tweet is, or one of his tweets, NBC News purposely left out this part of my nuclear quote, until such time as the world comes to its senses regarding nukes. Dishonest! Exclamation point. So it's just funny. He'll always end it with liar, dishonest. I agree. I love the guy. That's just an example. I did another segment of Trump trolling the media. The problem, however, with this whole notion that the world order is being upended, I will read you a Politico article from just recently. Trump challenges the world order. So when President Obama, $20 billion a year, signed off on $20 billion a year to upgrade U.S. nuclear capabilities, that was okay. New strategic bomber, the world order was fine with that. That's world order. It's very orderly. Won the Nobel Peace Prize, bombed 7 countries. Now sending more Americans to Syria. That's all. The world order is fine. We still have 8,000 Americans, no, close to 10,000 Americans in Afghanistan, around 5,000 in Iraq. World order is just fine. Trump challenges the world order. The president-elect has upended long-held conventions on nuclear proliferation and relations with Russia. Well, which one is it? Is he a puppet of Putin, or is he going to be? Is he going to upend long-held conventions and relations with Russia? Which one is it? Even Politico is contradicting itself. President-elect Donald Trump is alarming critics by not only threatening to dispatch with political correctness, but also disregarding the basic tenets of the world order surrounding nuclear weapons. What are the basic tenets? That nobody can tweet something he tweeted something. Well, he didn't go through Congress. There's no national dialogue on increasing our nuclear capabilities, which I'm against. Upgrading, fine. I understand you don't want false alarms and all these things, but to increase the nuclear capacity or capabilities, I'm against that. I had a segment on that. So I can say that I'm against Trump's policy position without saying that he's upending the world order and he's a psycho. With a single tweet Thursday. So this is funny. They say President-elect Trump is alarming critics by not only threatening to dispatch with the political correctness, disregarding the basic tenets of the world order. Then the next paragraph is, with a single tweet Thursday. And then a follow-up chat with a single tweet. That's the problem. That's the problem. A single tweet from Trump. And the New York Times, the Washington Post, they go nuts. That's the big issue. Trump entered the holiday weekend shaking up global affairs by stating an interest in vastly expanding the nuclear arsenal, even if it means restarting an arms race with Russia. This was a tweet right after a tweet where he was talking about a letter from Vladimir Putin that stated that Putin and Trump, or Putin wanted better relations with the U.S. and Trump agreed. Well, which one is it? Are they supposed to be friends? Or is he now saber-rattling and causing a new Cold War? Which one is it? The propaganda from the establishment, they can't get their propaganda straight. While Trump's statements so far lack much by way of detail, that's another thing. I mean, I can go on forever. I'll keep this short. While Trump's statements so far lack much by way of detail, then the whole article is he's upending the world order and the sky is falling. But by the way, we really don't know what he's going to do, but he tweeted something we hate. So now we're going to talk about the end of the world. This segment is about how propaganda can go in many different ways, especially when it pertains to an issue like the nuclear capabilities, like a tweet, like the notion of a world order. There's a whole bunch of things on YouTube regarding world order, all that stuff. I'll just say this. The way things are happening in the world today, not working out. I'm not sure if Trump's going to make things better or worse. Julian Assange of WikiLeaks said there are opportunities and challenges, could go either way. I hope that Trump does a lot better than President Obama and President Bush. I hope that there are opportunities for Donald Trump to make the world a better place. But one thing that I think is very dangerous is having a media that blows everything out of proportion, that makes everything into this apocalyptic scenario where one tweet decides the fate of the world.
You see, the reason I included this clip is because I could not have said it better myself. You know, I'm not really a fan of nuclear war. I mean, we already spend all this money on the military-industrial complex, so if there are necessary upgrades, that's fine. And I love how this guy is a leftist, but he sticks it in Obama's face. It's like, oh, you know, this guy wins the Nobel Peace Prize, but we're doing all these regime changes. You know, we still have troops in all these countries. We're still feeding the military-industrial complex beast. And it's like, you know, he signs this deal. It's like more nukes already. And, yeah, this is the Peace Prize president, basically making a joke out of it. I mean, how many things have Obama and Clinton made a joke out of? You know, both Clintons, Bill and Hillary, and Obama, and George W. Bush. You know, I just hope that for Trump's sake, when he gets in there, he does at least some of the things he says he's going to do. I understand Congress can hamstring him at any time. They control the purse strings. But I at least hope he does some of the things he says. And I hope that we do not get into a nuclear war. But now you know some things about nukes, what Donald Trump has said, what they are capable of, what happened during the Cold War, the triad, you know, the whole idea of preventing attacks, but if there's mutually assured destruction, what could happen? And I think it's better that the U.S. and Russia be allies. Personally speaking, Putin and Trump are not as close as you think, though, I say. I think we could easily pursue a relationship of detente, and I don't see why we shouldn't, quite frankly, with any country where it's possible. why would we not want to have as many allies as possible? Why does that not make sense? You know, I mean, where are people's heads at where they want to have these perpetual wars? I mean, I guess when Eisenhower said, beware of the military-industrial complex, he really knew what he was talking about. This was a guy that was a general. Don't forget that. Don't ever forget that. Eisenhower, who was a Republican, and I thought he was a very good Republican president. He knew exactly what the hell that he was talking about. Don't forget to share this, subscribe to my channel, like it, comment on it. Really, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think? Thank you very much for listening and watching.